I drink good coffee every morning. It comes from a place that's far away. And when I'm done, I feel like talking. Without you here, there is less to say. I don't want you thinking that I'm unhappy, or what is closer to the truth is that if I lived till I was 102, I just don't think I'll ever get over you. I'm no longer moved to drink strong whiskey. I shook the hand of time and I knew that if I lived till I could no longer climb my stairs, oh, I just don't think I'll ever get over you. Yeah. Your face, it dances and it haunts me. Your laughter still ringing in my ears. I still find pieces of your presence here. Even after all these years, I don't want you thinking I don't get asked to dinner, 'cause I'm here to say that I sometimes do. Even though I may soon feel the touch of love, I just don't think I'll ever get over you. And if I lived till I was 102, oh, I just don't think I'll ever get over you. Welcome, everyone, to the pre-recorded live show, coming to you pre-recordedly and lively from all of our various respective domiciles. The reason for that is fucking COVID.
We love to see it.
No
We
one
need COVID
here.
shirts.
No one here has actually tested positive. However, my wife tested positive, as well as another person in our group, and that means I almost certainly have it.
I have the antibodies, though, which means I technically was positive sometime.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what
So
they told me. Like,
you're a super mutant.
it's what it is.
I've
I've been
been-
saying
Of course, Preston would be super immune of all of us. Of course, Preston would be.
I've been up on vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, which is found in beef. So I'm pretty sure that even if COVID tried to like infiltrate my body, that my body would just like immediately eviscerate it.
it's probably or you just have like soft, have soft
science.
symptoms, reaction, and then good to go.
And I've got science to tell you that it,
And science.
That's true.
Yeah,
science. So this is a bit of an odd one, so we'll have to do it from the intranet rather than doing it in person like we normally do. So this is the other angle from which we record. So other than the COVID, how's everyone doing?
Great. I just had a good lunch with somebody.
Oh, did you have a good lunch with somebody?
Yeah,
What kind of
good.
somebody?
Myself.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
It's a bit masturbatory, but okay.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
I would say selfish, but probably the same word.
Can't wait to hear about that later.
Well, not tomorrow. LOL.
I'm feeling a little anxious because we have our house inspection tomorrow. So
Yeah,
I'm excited, but like also like this much like anxious. It's been a whirlwind of the last
you should be
3 to 5 days between just like this stuff with the house and both me and Matt kind of fluctuating and how we're feeling about everything, and then this COVID scare thing, and then I was probably going to lose my mind if either of us tested positive for COVID and we couldn't go to the inspection tomorrow.
Luckily,
you guys have the flu.
No, I had Matt currently
Who cares?
has.
You're gonna nitpick me on that?
With no symptoms. Matt has the flu, apparently.
that's
they're coming.
So, well, no, because so my flu was like I'm pretty sure, so that week that I had the horrible allergies, I'm pretty sure those were the first symptoms. And then I had that bad night on Monday, and I'm pretty sure that was the pinnacle of it. So I'm pretty sure that's what he has.
I have very mixed feelings about having to quarantine, like seriously quarantine. Like we cannot leave the house for 2 weeks, like not even a little bit, because now I both simultaneously do not get to and do not have to go to the gym.
Oh, yikes. Oh, man, as soon as you started.
I thought
this is exactly what happened last time.
I thought it would be something. This is serious, but I thought it would be something more serious.
No, I cannot. I've never had such an ambivalent feeling in my life when we were driving home from the doctor's office and I suddenly realized, oh, I can't. Oh, I don't. Oh, I can't. I don't have to. I don't get to.
It's like getting the okay to stay home sick.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Well, hopefully. Well, not hopefully. I really don't want to lose my sense of taste and smell, but that seems to be the most common symptom.
Especially with this cooking show you're trying to start.
Well, yeah, but I mean, nobody else can taste or smell what I'm making either, so maybe it'll help.
True.
It'll heighten my sense of like what it looks like.
We're one and the same.
You could do some online boxing workouts, Chris.
Assuming I'm not feeling miserable, I don't know. But well, here's the other thing too: the losing your taste of sense of smell, I've heard, seriously helps with dieting. So
yeah, I mean,
I was hungry. You can eat like boiled chicken. Just have
Yeah.
just boiled chicken breast. That's what's dinner.
I know
And
it's
just
healthy.
drink-
I don't.
Honestly, just drink water. Just drink as much water as you possibly can.
Yeah. So, anywho, that's where we're at. So we are we're 1 week away from. We've got one more after this, but in the midst of, towards the end of our series on stupid things Christians say. And this week, I know I emailed out something slightly different, but I want to use the phrase that I've heard more commonly than what I emailed out. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Am I successfully building up the tension?
Lay
Okay.
it on me.
Here it goes. God does not disappoint. Have you ever heard that?
I
God
was
don't make
talking
no
about
junk.
that today, literally today, with a friend. So yeah, I've heard that.
I used to particularly. So I used to help lead worship at a Baptist kind of young adult college ministry when I myself was a young adult and in college, and it's not so much something I heard very often around the church I grew up in, but I definitely heard it a lot around that Baptist college ministry, and I definitely heard it. A girlfriend I had for a long-term, like 4-year relationship, she grew up in the Pentecostal church, and I used to hear it around those circles as well. God does not disappoint. And I guess the thing, I guess the thesis that we will unpack is, yes, he does.
Yeah,
That's my thesis for the evening.
love it. Sounds like it was written at a doctoral level.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and I'm actually, I have to take a class at the master's degree level. I have my master's degree, and I have to take yet another master's degree level class. So I'm preparing my oratorial, written, vernacular, the ability to communicate, and yeah, I think this is a well constructed argument. Yes, he does. It's on par with like nuh-uh, which I think is an equally valid argument.
No, you're you're disappointing. No, you.
I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah. I think we both are. That's what.
We all are.
Yeah.
So here I have in my hands, my hot little hands, the Bible, and I'm going to read a poem from the Psalms, Psalm 137. And this poem, before I read it, let's talk about it. So I've talked before about the Babylonian exile. It's a major event in the history of Judaism, and then therefore by extension our faith as well, because Jesus was a Jew, he was a rabbi, and so if we're learning from Jesus and the Old Testament, then we have to enter into the Jewish narrative. And a significantly tragic part of the Jewish narrative is the Israelite people, and Jerusalem in particular was conquered by a much more powerful nation state, Babylon. Oh gosh, I should have double checked the numbers. I want to say this is around 500 BCE, but don't quote me on that. Google it, and you'll find. In fact, hey, we're online. Somebody Google it while I'm explaining. Yeah, somebody Google it and I'll explain.
When
Just
the exile
Google,
was?
yeah, Babylonian exile. I think it was around 500 BCE. I think. So the whole idea here is that Israel was conquered by Babylon and then exiled from Jerusalem back to Babylon. What was the results?
597.
597. Okay, so I knew there was a
No.
5 in there. All right.
You're about
Okay.
a century off, though.
I was only by 100 years off. So the Israelites were taken to Babylon, and that alone is kind of that's bad enough by itself. However, given the nature of the Israelite faith and the idea of the tabernacle and the temple, that this is the place where Yahweh comes to comes down from heaven and dwells in the midst of God's people, the Israelite nation. So taking them out of Jerusalem is like taking them out of the presence of Yahweh. It's like removing them from their ability to be in the midst of their God. And that's kind of the idea. And the history of the Israelite people, at least as is told through Scripture, is that their power and their success is derived from their communion with Yahweh. And so pulling them out is not only like taking them out of their homeland and making them live in a foreign place, but it's literally robbing them of their God. And that's the essence of the bitterness of that. And there's a psalm, which is just a poem or a song. The book of Psalms is poems and songs written by several different authors. And so in the book of Psalms, there's this one poem and it's Psalm 137, and it's about the Babylonian exile, and it's about literally the Israelites being marched to Babylon. So, like, picture this caravan of defeated Israelites being marched through the desert to Babylon, where they're going to now live and be low-class citizens because they've been conquered. Goes like this. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and there we wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows there we hung up our harps, for there our captors asked of us a song. And our tormentors asked for mirth, saying, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." Zion, by the way, is just another term for Jerusalem, specifically emphasizing the communion with Yahweh there. Zion. So sing us one of the songs of Zion. How could we sing Yahweh's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Remember, O Yahweh, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall. How they said, tear it down, down to its foundations. O daughter Babylon, you devastator. Happy shall they be who pay you back what you have done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock. So this is a poem in Scripture written about being conquered by Babylon and literally asking for vengeance against their children. So if nothing else, God disappoints, to say the least. Have you? I mean, so let me before we go into anything else, because I've got a few stories to tell actually. But before we go into that, I mean, have you ever felt bitter?
I mean, I could even say like less than bitter, but just a below expectation, or something was met below expectations of what it was, like, chalked up to be.
What do you mean?
Like a life experience or something. Like, oh, I thought this would be a lot more, this would be a happier moment. I thought this would be, I'd feel more like fulfilled.
It's hard not to make a sex joke right now.
Yeah, I know. It's difficult to say I'm fulfilled in this moment when I actually don't feel it. Like, I don't know, like something simple as like, it's not, but getting a house, or your first this or your first that, or having this explained by someone else saying, when you get there, you'll know. And then when it happens, you go, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, yeah. So it's a very like soft and not as bitter of a disappointment. But I mean, I think it's bitter though. I think it's a type of bitter we like to push off as maybe I was overthinking, or maybe I was thinking it was supposed to be better, and maybe it's my fault. And then it kind of starts to make a weird like loop on that.
Well, think about it. I mean, I'm less interested in the abstract and more interested in like your actual real stories.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share. Unless you were going to share and I cut you off.
Oh, I thought he was saying your equals Preston stories. I have a couple, but go.
But I mean it broadly. Like go, like whoever wants to go.
I was just going to say, I mean, I feel like bitter is kind of an emotion that I feel frequently. I have a big tendency to ice people out, particularly when I feel hurt. But honestly, it's an emotion I've been finding myself experiencing more and more and more recently, both with everything going on just in the world right now with coronavirus. I found myself even today, before we got our test results, Matt and I have this house inspection tomorrow. We have our anniversary trip next weekend. I literally was like, if I have coronavirus right now, I am going to be so pissed. Like, I was bitter about it before we even got the diagnosis and everything's fine. But I like.
Oh no.
Everything froze. Everything froze.
She looks bitter right there.
Yeah, she looks better right there. Oh, we lost you.
Am I back?
We lost you.
Okay.
Hey, we lost you at your bitterest. You were giving serious side eye when it froze.
I hope the video shows that.
Yeah.
It's definitely an emotion I've been experiencing more frequently. And then the other big thing for me is like, just with church stuff in general, a lot of like, I've done a lot of serious internal work and stuff with my family, and I've worked through a lot of that with my dad to the point where I don't really feel resentment with him, or bitterness with him as much. But right now, and over the course of the last year and a half, the thing that I've been particularly working through is my bitterness and anger and frustration at the Big C church, at my own personal experiences and things that have happened to me and around me because of how I grew up in the church. And I feel like that's something that's very common for a lot of people, but it doesn't get talked about often because of this, oh, God would never want to disappoint you. Oh, you're in God's building, like God's church. And like,
well, I think
I
got
a lot of pent up shit about
that. Well,
I
think there's, so one, I think a lot of people feel that way. And two, I think one of the reasons the church is really bad at it is because we don't have good answers.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of addicted to like simple answers that you can explain in a way that everyone will get them. Like we would rather have a packaged answer that you can kind of apply to everyone. And it just doesn't work that way in my experience. There don't get me wrong, there is a healthy theological response to it that is more than just abstract, academia, that actually does allow for individuals to remain connected to something bigger and still work through this stuff. But it's very complicated, and it often requires like not so much like a sermon as much as a like, hey, why don't you take my hand and let's walk through this a little bit, and let me just walk with you, and you go ahead and go, and I'll be with you, so you don't have to be as scared about it. Or like it almost it requires so much more attentiveness and more compassion, and I think the church is genuinely addicted. Like I think that's the right word, to prepackaged once and for all answers that they can kind of like, well, I know this will work, so here. Everything happens for a reason is like a really good example of a prepackaged kind of like, God is always for you,
Yeah.
So like, I think it's out of the insecurity of not knowing how to address it. I think that's what's wrong with the church's response to these kinds of things. But yeah, I'm with you. I think we have a lot of work to do as far as like correcting that and even convincing other church leaders that it is in fact a problem.
Yeah,
that's the other thing too.
It caused me to be jaded, both towards other churches outside of our own, It's kind of caused some division in some relationships that I've had because of my jadedness in general, like bitterness walls up. As well as like it definitely put some distance with my relationship with God too. And that's something that's the part that I've been mostly working on. But like it's been a weird season of a year for me, I feel like, because so much good has happened, but there's so much stuff that I'm realizing like I need to work through, and I've barely even scratched the surface of it. And I have to constantly check myself to make sure I'm not icing or building walls out, because that's what I do.
Yeah. Preston, what did you have? You had some ideas.
Well, before I forget, on Courtney's point too, and not to pick on you, but and actually no, it's not you. It's more of like this argument here is a two-sided one. While the church, yes, likes to copy and paste and put answers on, and I'm in no way like alleviating this from them. There's on another side of people do want the answer, so someone's looking for it. Someone's looking for it. So if the church says I don't know, and that person is turned away and looked at and seen as a failure or a not a success to the church, as the business it is or whatever, I can see the other side of it going, well, if we copy and paste, we can have them back, and then we can do our effortful. It never happens, but we can do our effortful thinking and praying through or talking or whatever.
Yeah, even if you like when somebody says, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with," I'm looking for answers, and the church response, even if the church response isn't "I don't know," but we can help with that, it's going to require effort and commitment on your part.
Yeah.
And the person's like, "Never mind. I'd rather just. Can't you just tell me a sermon, and I just write a check?" And like, there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of those two dynamics cooperating with each other, and that's become the foundation of a lot of American Christianity, has just become that transactional kind of like, I'm looking for answers. Well, great. Come to church, tithe, and we'll make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And they're like, great, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
And that bleeds into blame as well. So when one side does get chided, the other side can automatically assume it's the other side that did it, and there's no self-reflection or blame. It's literally what we've been talking about, this whole little grace word of like, oh, there's a gray area there. So back to my expectations point, I thought up of something really good. Is we've talked about this before on the Kindred Spirit podcast. Shout out, go follow that. It's pretty good conversations.
Apple Podcast, Spotify, all the places you get them.
Yeah. Growing into an adult, growing from adolescence into adulthood. There's no that conversation we have every single time we talk. There's no line. There's no threshold. There's no you made it. There's just are my parents my equals now? Are my parents my friends now? Do I still call my parents' friends Mr. and Mrs.? Or
when am I allowed to cuss around them?
Are we allowed to curse? Am I allowed to speak freely about business with them now? Do they trust what I say? Do they agree with me? Getting to that point, and I'm just using parents as an example.
At what point can I tell my dad I voted Democrat?
yeah. But the expectation of, when you're a kid, when I'm finally an adult, when I'm finally a grown up, I'm going to be able to do whatever I'd like to. And you get there and go, oh, I've totally mistyped this whole situation. There's responsibilities I had no idea about that either no one taught me or I didn't listen. I've got things that are happening with my body physically, emotionally, maturatorily, whatever that word is. Whatever, everything's growing and moving and changing and shifting, and everybody around you is also doing that because you stay around your age generally. But the expectation is, when we finally get to that stopping point, you've made it. You're an adult now. There's not one. And that's that disappointment of, oh, okay.
It keeps going.
Yeah, also that. Like, this ride doesn't stop.
Yeah.
There's no bathroom breaks.
I remember, so ever since I was in like 9th grade, like I at least had a sense that I was interested in ministry, you know? If not I might be a pastor one day. You know, I had a sense of that very early on. Um, and so from ninth grade, so I had this kind of goal. Like, well, okay, so let me start by I'm exploring what I'm going to be when I grow up, you know? And one of those possibilities is ministry. And I'm very involved in my church, and the church was like a life raft and a really a hold fast kind of like safe space for me. And so there was this like, oh, I want to be here and I want to explore this, and great. And then I go to college. I'm like, okay, well, psychology. Let me explore psychology, and I had started working for the church in college, and like that allowed me to go to college and move out of my home, and like, okay. And then I graduate college, and then I'm like, well, I've decided that I don't think sitting in a room talking to somebody one on one all day every day is what's good for me. Like, I don't think just a talk therapist 100% is going to be something that I can do. So it's looking more and more like something ministry, and then I just keep I keep going and going and going down this road over and over again, and making and then before you know it, I'm taking seminary classes, and then before you know it, I'm meeting with my the church that I was a member of, and meeting with their board, and they're certifying me as a candidate for ministry, and I'm going on funerals and hospital visits with my pastor, and doing all these things that are like, I'm going to be a pastor. And then at some point it like locks in. It goes from like, I'm along for the ride, into this thing of like, no, I feel assured in this. Like, and even if hurdles come at me, I'm going to clear these hurdles because this is where I'm going. And you go, and I encountered several hurdles. I've talked about on this live show and the podcast. I've talked about like, I had divorce in the middle of that. I had a pastoral change, and the new pastor just hated me, and it caused me to I had to readdress my whole employment situation. Like, I've been working for the church, and that's just all this stuff. But by that time, those things come, and I'm just like, no, I am called to be a pastor. This is what I'm doing. And then eventually, I graduate seminary. I meet with what we call it, BOM, the Board of Ordained Ministry. They commission me as an elder in the church. I'm appointed as a pastor, and then I'm a pastor at a church. I'm the pastor at the church. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now what? Now what do I? And it's so weird and hard to describe until you've been on the other side of it. But I have been dealing with now what? Like, now I just am a pastor. And so now I certainly have long-term goals, but those long-term goals are retirement or a year from now. And but there's nothing in between. There's nothing there's no 10-year plan, and it's it's done a real number on me.
It's really imposter syndrome. It's that very I'm not living up to what I thought this would be. Or, maybe it's my fault, or I
actually feel the opposite. I feel more like I don't know. I guess I just imagined this would feel different.
So that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I never even. It's not even a conscious thing. I just imagined this would feel different. And in my peers and people who I'm very close with who are also pastors, this is a very common experience. And people deal with it in lots of different ways. Some people just kind of double down on the I'll be all things for all people, and they kind of burn themselves out.
Yeah.
It doesn't go well because they're I think they feel more of the imposter syndrome you were talking about, and they kind of tend to do that. I'm actually the opposite. I find myself kind of oh, I thought this was going to feel or be, but I'm at the end of the day, I'm still me. Like nothing about me has changed other than how the outside world now can trust that what I'm saying about myself is true. And that's about the only thing that's true. Like I've always just kind of known, no, or at least sensed, no, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And I've been saying it and kind of trying to fight for it for a while. And then all of a sudden, the rest of the world that has power over that suddenly says, okay, we agree with you and we recognize it and we're going to give you some of that authority. And then you go like, great. And then you're like, oh, but I'm just still me. And like, you have to go inside. Like you have to, like I'm having to go inside. And of course, quarantine helps with that a lot.
It is weird. There's vindication when there's vindication. Like being a music teacher, having a parent come up to me and go, I don't know where he or she learned this, but they did not do this before they met you. So something has changed, and now they are doing chores, or they're listening better, or they're brushing their teeth every now, or whatever. Something has changed where they have some kind of substance feel for like respect for themselves or listening or whatever.
They're learning more than drums.
Correct.
They're learning something else about humanity and life and
you're
being.
Teaching them about how to be.
And that, right, and it's not from mom or dad, it's from someone else who feels older, but not as old as mom and dad, really. So it feels more like older, whatever explanation you need for it. But that vindication happens, and nobody talks about the 3 or 4 seconds right after. So you get 1, 2 of, you know what? This really is paying off. This is great. I love helping. Okay. Also, I have these problems. What's going on now? Everything's coming back. Why do I feel now? It's back. Now it's back. Oh, I'm the same person I was at 8, and I got told at 8:30, and now it's 8:35, and I'm 8 o'clock pressing again. There's no like, okay, you've reached it.
You gained a level.
There's not. There's that. Yeah. That's exactly what it is, I think. And I'm wondering if that's like a taught thing while you're a child, because your life is so boxy. You're just taught, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then it's like transactional stuff. Like you do all these, but no one goes over the, mommy had a weird relationship in junior year of high school, but like weird. It's again a gray area thing.
It reminds me of like your parents are people. It's a tangent thing, but it also is related. Like your parents are people. They went through, and like we have this thing where it's like, no, they're the grown-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you become a grown-up, you're like,
I still think that they're the adults. It's
weird.
Yeah.
But then when you become an adult, because like you all are grown-ups, like you have jobs and degrees and you pay rent and you're gonna go to a home inspection tomorrow. Like,
what the heck?
like you are grown-ups. Now I will say something along the lines in me actually did click into place where I do feel like a grown-up. I'm like, no, I am a grown-up. And it might just be that most of our congregation is younger than me. It might just be that. But I don't think that's it, because now that I really, really think about it, I felt that way at Eustis also. And in Eustis, I was by far among the youngest people in that congregation. But there is something that clicked, but it still doesn't change the me that's inside of it.
Yeah.
Like I still feel like me.
Yeah, I still don't feel like a grown up. I feel like a young adult, and that's
which is like its own little caveat category.
You're not quite there yet, but you'll get there, and when you do, you won't be disappointed.
One day you'll start caring about the economy.
Maybe it'll click at 30. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I was going to touch on your that sounds like a coming of age thing too, even though it's a little later in life. But I guess you had whatever confidence or sense of self finally acclimated, and you go, oh, okay, now adult is here. Even in that of like, oh, I'm confident in myself enough to do this and teach someone maybe even older than me. But there's a me that doesn't get addressed.
So I do want to talk about, because I don't have that at all like worked out in completion. But I do, like, I can tell stories about like moments that contributed to that. Like because and it is kind of this elongated process more than it is a moment. But there are also like pivotal moments, that really contributed to that. One of them being divorce.
Big
Like,
one.
I mean, because we started this whole thing with like God does not disappoint. It's like, yeah, he does. He absolutely disappoints, and that was a really crucial lesson for me in my divorce. Because now it's easy for me to look back and say, we both, like, I contributed to that divorce. Like I was unhealthy in that relationship, and I can see what was going on from my side.
There's two sides here. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But at the time, what it felt like to me was, I'm a good Christian boy who did everything I could to like follow the rules that were given to me.
Here we go.
Like I was trying to do the right thing. And even
this is my story.
Yeah, like I think it's a lot of people's story. And
Yeah,
so I found a girl. I did my best to love her. We got married. I worked for the church. I was following a calling into ministry. I was a worship leader and a youth director. Like, I'm a good Christian boy. I'm doing all the right things. When things started to go wrong in our relationship very early on, this relationship lasted. I mean, the marriage actually lasted a little over a year, effectively. Like, it's like very short from wedding to separation, very short. And when it started going wrong very quickly after the wedding. I was like, oh, and then it was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna do whatever it takes. I'll go to counseling. I'll even if I'm not feeling it, I'll do what I'm supposed to. Like, whatever is asked of me, I will do it. I'm just gonna do it. And even after all of that, like good Christian boy, called to ministry, youth director, worship director. I'll do all the right things, and then I'll even I'll just like completely just whatever I have to do, tell me whatever to do, and I'll do it. And even that ended in, like, I remember her calling me from another state because she had left to go to another state to look at potential places where she was going to stay to take this other position or whatever. And I remember her calling me and basically telling me, like, I'm going to live here now and you're not going to come with me. It's like, I did everything right. I mean, I didn't, but if you could go back to me in that moment, like, but I'm a good boy.
Yeah.
I'm a good boy. And like, God does not disappoint. I guess he does. Of course he does.
That is the point.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it. Like, I needed that disappointment. I mean, like, God forbid that relationship worked out. You
had children.
For either one of us. Yeah, God, and thank God we didn't involve any other souls. Like, like, Jesus. Can you imagine if we had kids? And like, and of course, because we see that a lot. Also, that is also a thing. Like, and in hindsight, what I really am is very thankful that she had the balls to get out of the relationship. And also that comes with, I had to go through a lot of grief. I had to wrestle with God. I had to go through all kinds of stuff before I could finally come to understand. Oh, no, I see what she was doing. I get it. Like, I understand why. That makes sense. And you're right. We didn't have any business being together in the first place, I don't think. Like, we could have been friends, I'm sure, I can be friends with almost anybody, but we just had no right to be in any type of romantic relationship. And like that's a part of me becoming a grown-up. Like, that perspective and that seeing myself for who I really am, and that seeing myself for who I really am and becoming like an established kind of like in my bones comfortable with my life came almost entirely from God disappointing me over and over again. Like, I wouldn't have worked without God disappointing me over and over and over again. So I wonder about, like, where are you in that? I mean, have you ever been through something that was awful and come out the other side and been able to cut, like do you ever have hindsight? Do you ever have perspective on things?
I'd say that exact situation, except without the rings. But good.
Well, that's the way to do it if you can.
Yeah.
If you got to go through it without getting the law involved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you hit a chord when you said being a good boy too. I mean, just anybody attacking your childhood already. Not attacking, that's an aggressive word, but going back and kind of like pulling from, I follow the rules, be a good boy. I never was the one to start the fight. I was always, right on, keep your feet on the line, stay in line,
always
keep
keeping
it going.
the peace.
Always keeping the peace. Whatever, shout out. But for whatever reason, that right when you said I was being a good boy was like lightning, because it's I won't say it's all men, but I have a feeling a lot of men and some women too have this weird like responsibility or something that is put on them, or they subject themselves to in an object way.
I don't think it's all by any means, because I know plenty of people who are like, they're kind of like natural rebels, like they feel the opposite,
Okay. Well, that's all I am now, but like in spite
but
of,
not really,
because I went through the good boy. I did this and it didn't work, and I feel like that's probably where it came from. Not necessarily like out of spite, but it feels like it sometimes.
I think I know where you're coming from. The way that I experience it from the outside looking in is less about rebel and more about the like. I'm not going to let you tell me who I am and what's important to me anymore. Like, I sense more of that. Like, no. I decide what's important to me.
Yeah, a little bit of self-worth.
And I will go down, and that's. I think that's why we bond so much over like your Mom's House podcast, and comedy in general. Like, because
don't tell me what's funny.
Yeah, that's a staple of like really good stand-ups and really good like podcasting right now is rooted in the no. If it's funny, then I get to laugh. Period. Like, that's it. And unless it's really intended maliciously, then fucking lighten up. like and you can tell, like, and anybody who can't tell, then like you should get a diagnosis, man. Like you can tell, and I think like you and I have bonded a lot over that, and I sense a similar. It's not necessarily rebellion as much as it is like self-protection, self-assuredness. Like, you are going to be who you are, take it or leave it. And like, I think there's a certain amount of confidence that comes from that. Maybe that drives that rather than comes from it.
Yeah.
Like,
and not to get too personal, but based off of this past situation, it's caused me in relationships, be it dating or a personal relationship that's close to me, when I've got to a weird changing point and people have seen a different person and go, "You're not the same. What's changed about you? What happened to Good Boy? What happened to you do all this, or you're like really busy now and you do this and you're yourself. You talk loud. What happened?" Where it changed, it's now this. I've said it to you before, Courtney, and it was really because it made you giggle. I can't remember what it was though, but it was along the lines of, if you see me for what I am now and trust that's what I am and you don't like it, I don't want to say I couldn't care less, but you're not seeing it for what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
more like you do you. Like, hey man, if you don't like it, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
going off of that, that's where
Yeah.
a lot of like when you ask the question, like, have you ever like been just really disappointed? Like, what do you make of all that we just talked about? Like, that's been the big one for me is like, as an Enneagram 2, like, I just care so much about my relationships and my people. And when I started to do like some serious internal work on myself, similarly to Preston, I like opened up more. I realized that a lot of my opinions about things are not the common opinions of most people. And like some of the things that I would say were rowdy.
Well, I think not most people that you in your direct social circle. Because I actually don't, I think you're more in line with most people now.
Yeah.
But
there's something about growing up in Christian circles that there's a certain amount of like vocabulary that you're supposed to use, and more than that, vocabulary is too shallow.
Walking a line. Like,
yeah,
you're constantly, and that's what it felt like all the time. Is I was constantly walking this line of I was making a conscious choice every day of, do I minimize myself and how I feel and tell myself that everything is fine, or do I be honest with myself and express myself and then possibly lose all those friends and relationships? And it took a while for me to kind of get to that point, but eventually I was just like, you know what? Like, screw it. Like, at this point, like, I want to be who I am, and who I am is not like necessarily, I mean, I am very go with the flow, but like not always. And I am very opinionated, and I'm loud, and I'm quirky, and I cuss and say the fuck word, and like take it or leave it. And like that was hard because I had to realize that choosing to be myself and live into that meant I was going to have to either explain myself or deal with a lot of loss and a lot of heartbreak. And that season was rough. But I'm happy with where I'm at now. I've got great friends. I've actually mended a lot of those, not a lot of them, but a good amount of those relationships, the ones that I actually want there, that actually matter to me. And I also have come to a place of I'm not willing to compromise who I am to fit your mold or fit your standard. And if I'm out of line, we can have that conversation and talk about that. But I'm not going to make myself less than to make you more comfortable anymore. So,
in my opinion, this is what the real church is actually supposed to be for.
Mm-hmm.
It's the real church is supposed to be, again, I talk about grace a lot, a place that is rooted in such sufficient grace that a person who is so like just like what you described, which I really identify with too. So imagine a person who has had like the French, we all grow up with like the people we grow up with, and that's who you end up having. It has more to do with proximity than anything else. It's not necessarily affinity as much as it is proximity. You just grow up with a certain amount of people, and those become your friends. And like that's the first thing that happens is proximity. And then out of proximity, let's say you have like 100 people around you, you'll find through affinity, you'll find like the 3 or 4 that you really click with.
Mm-hmm.
But in the grand scheme of things, 4 out of 100 is like, there are lots of more people out there. 100 people to start with is not a lot. And so like what I see happening with a lot of people is exactly what you described. Something happens, they have some kind of an awakening, they have some kind of a revelation, but then they don't have the means to jump social circles. And so it forces people into this weird paradigm where they have to choose between being authentic and alone, or being still in friendships but having to like deny themselves a lot.
And that's not an easy
in a bad
choice
way.
to make.
It's an impossible choice to make. It's a lose-lose.
It's the path of a correcting addict.
So
almost copy and paste.
Yes. Yeah. So a good church is the gracious community that somebody can connect to without so that they can truly be themselves and explore the revelation that they've had, and maybe even learn some skills and some terms and some like helpful tool belt stuff along the way to start to understand what happened, while also maintaining not just a superficial, which is where we lose a lot of points in the church, not just a superficial relationship where it's like we see each other every Sunday and that dress is so nice, oh, your hair is good, but in much more of a significant way where it's like, no, these people know who I am. I'm not afraid of showing them who I am. I'm not afraid of talking to them about what's going on, and they're not afraid of doing that with me either, because the thing that's undergirding this whole establishment is grace. It's the humility that we all come to this table inadequately. We all enter into this communion not quite there, but invited anyway by someone who is, like, and when we start to really embrace the like, I'm inadequate and completely loved and accepted, and that's what grace is. That's the nature of the Christ. And so is everyone else. Then we can actually have the courage to be like, you know what? Not really that into pick whatever, like pick, like pick your most favorite unpopular opinion. Be like, I'm really not sure about that. And you can still be like, all right, well, we can talk about it, but there's nothing you can do or say short of harming someone. Right. Obviously, somebody came in and was like, F you, N word, R word, like, it's like, whoa, whoa. You can't do that. You can't be a complete and total jerk. But you can come in and be like, I'm not really sure about how I feel about these things that are happening. And let other people be like, well, that's surprising, but let's talk about it. And that's what the church is supposed to be for. That's what it's supposed to be. But we've just lost that thread, man. I feel like we're about at an hour. I don't want to overrun our time. Any last closing thoughts or closing words?
I had a shameful moment to say. When I was younger and you were growing up in youth group and more or less impressing others around you, being Mr. Good Boy, Mr. Pastor's friend, Mr. Guy, if I know more things than you, I'd like to tell you. So when we have like a group prayer, our youth pastor would always ask someone to like, get in the circle and somebody pray for us. And if no one did it, like you do, like every single youth group does. Mm-hmm. But if no one would go, and I'd jump in. And the shameful moment was have this exorbitant prayer. Everything comes all out on the table. Dear Lord, just all the good stuff with the accent and everything. And the youth pastor came up to me later and goes, it's something like, where did you hear all that? And I was like, what do you mean? It was a really good prayer, wasn't it? And he's like, it was a really good prayer? I'm like, yeah, it sounded good, right?
I killed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And he goes, you think you're on a stage or something? And I go, I don't know what you mean. He goes, you will. And walked off. I'm like, okay. I mean, that stuck with me for like weeks, and I had to go back to him and ask, like, I gotta ask what you meant. And he goes, it's got to be something of authenticity to pray about versus pleasing everyone around you. There's no whatever. If you feel sad, pray for something sad. If you feel this, feel for this. So again, on this disappointment thread of he doesn't disappoint.
Sometimes he'll disappoint you pretty
sometimes
publicly.
He will. And if you're not thinking of it, it'll happen and show you, despite your coping and despite your weird looks at things.
And I will say, because that was something that was really that I worked very seriously on as a chaplain. Ironically, it's when I got real honest, and just like kind of boldly honest in my prayers, that I found that they were, what I was saying out loud was actually helpful for the people around me. So I was leading in prayer in a public way, but when I got caught up in I'll use flowery vocabulary. Like I'll just find a way to. But instead, when I was just like this is sad. I don't know what to do about this. I would like to believe that you're going to come down and heal this, but I don't know that it's true. And that those types of prayers where I was just being really, really honest, that's when the families were like, "Oh God, thank
Wow.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming here." It's like, there's something to this. There's something to this.
It's the ask the stupid question principle. Is what it is.
Yeah.
If there is no stupid question, we promise. Please ask because no one else will.
Yeah, just you can be honest. If you can be honest, even in the midst of like being embarrassed, if you can find the humility to be honest in embarrassment, that almost always wins the day. Like that's what good leadership is made of, So, all right, let me close it out. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Your presence here, even